Sophia grew up hearing her mother say she was ugly and had weird hair. These cruel words were etched into her mind, and she developed low self-esteem that followed her into adulthood. In her friendships, she always felt inferior, believing that others judged her the same way her mother did. This sense of inadequacy often prevented her from opening up and forming deep bonds, leaving her isolated and insecure. When she started dating, her insecurities about her appearance intensified. She constantly doubted her partner's love and attraction, fearing he would leave her upon noticing her imperfections. This insecurity led to constant jealousy and an incessant need for validation, ultimately wearing down the relationship. She struggled to believe she deserved to be loved, leading her to accept disrespectful behavior, fearing that no one else would want her. In marriage, these childhood wounds continued to impact her life. She avoided important discussions out of fear of rejection, resulting in a lack of honest communication with her husband. Her distorted self-image led her to accept less than she deserved, making her excessively submissive and unhappy. Over time, she realized she needed to confront these traumas to build a healthy relationship. And with therapeutic support, she began to rebuild her self-esteem, learning to value herself and set boundaries. Since she was little, Sophia constantly heard her mother's criticisms about her actions. "Why do you act so strangely? Why do you walk like that?" These sarcastic and disdainful comments made her feel inadequate and embarrassed, always doubting her own behaviors. In her social relationships, she lived in fear of being ridiculed or judged, which led her to isolate herself and avoid new friendships. The insecurity generated by these criticisms prevented her from expressing herself authentically, making her feel constantly stifled. When she started dating, the internalized criticisms became an even bigger obstacle. She constantly felt watched and inadequate, believing that any movement or attitude could be disapproved of. This excessive self-criticism generated anxiety and made her constantly question if she was acting correctly. The fear of judgment from her partner prevented her from being herself, creating a significant emotional barrier, making it difficult to build an intimate and sincere relationship. In marriage, the impacts of these criticisms were even more profound. The difficulty in feeling comfortable and secure in her actions made communication with her husband tense and fragmented. She avoided taking initiatives and expressing her opinions, fearing to be criticized again. This constant fear of disapproval undermined her confidence and autonomy within the relationship, making her feel subdued and undervalued. With the help of therapy, she began to challenge these negative beliefs, learning to value herself and express herself without fear of judgments, which gradually strengthened her self-esteem and improved the dynamics of her marriage. Sophia grew up hearing her mother say devastating things like, "I wish you had never been born," and "I regret having you." These cruel words made her believe that her existence was a mistake, leading to a deep sense of inadequacy and rejection. From an early age, she carried the weight of thinking she didn't deserve love or happiness, severely affecting her ability to connect with others. In her friendships, she avoided opening up completely, fearing that if anyone truly knew her, they would reject her as well. In the early stages of romantic relationships, this feeling of rejection continued to haunt her. Sophia was constantly worried about being abandoned by her partner, believing she was unworthy of love. This insecurity made her excessively dependent, constantly seeking validation and fearing she would be replaced by someone better. This anxiety created tension and conflicts, making it difficult to build a balanced and healthy relationship. In marriage, the emotional scars left by these phrases were even more evident. Sophia struggled to believe that her husband truly loved her and was committed to the relationship. She constantly feared that he might regret being with her, just as her mother regretted having her. This insecurity led to constant vigilance, fear of abandonment, and difficulties in fully trusting her partner. It was only through an intense therapeutic process that she began to deconstruct these negative beliefs and build a stronger self-esteem. Over time, she learned to accept her intrinsic worth and believed that she deserved to be loved and happy, which brought a new positive dynamic to her marriage. Sophia frequently heard her mother say things like, "You cost me too much," and "It's too hard to take care of you." These comments made her feel like a burden from a young age, internalizing the belief that she was a burden to others. This feeling of being an inconvenience deeply affected her social interactions, making her excessively self-reliant and reluctant to ask for help or share her problems. Sophia feared that expressing her needs would push people away, so she preferred to handle everything on her own, which further isolated her. In her romantic relationships, the belief that she was a burden manifested in harmful ways. Sophia hesitated to share her emotions and needs with her partner, always afraid of being seen as a problem. This behavior resulted in poor communication and unresolved feelings, creating emotional barriers between her and her partner. She constantly tried to compensate for this perception by going out of her way to please others, often putting their needs above her own. In marriage, these insecurities intensified. Sophia avoided asking for support or expressing her concerns, fearing her husband would see her as a burden, just like her mother did. This not only increased her own stress, but also created emotional distance in the relationship. The lack of open communication about her needs and feelings led to misunderstandings and resentment. Only through therapy and self-discovery did she begin to understand that her needs were valid, and that asking for help did not make her a burden. Over time, she learned to communicate more openly and honestly with her husband, strengthening their bond and promoting a more balanced and supportive partnership. During childhood, Sophia constantly heard her mother say, "Why can't you be like your brother?" or "Other children are better than you." These demeaning comparisons made her feel constantly inadequate and inferior. Growing up with the sense that she was never good enough, Sophia developed fragile self-esteem and deep insecurity. In her social relationships, she was always comparing herself to others, believing everyone was superior to her. This prevented her from celebrating her own achievements and made her feel envious and resentful towards her friends. When Sophia entered romantic relationships, these comparisons continued to negatively impact her. She constantly wondered if her partner would prefer to be with someone better. This insecurity led to possessive and jealous behavior, with a constant fear of being replaced. Instead of feeling secure and loved, she lived in a state of anxiety, desperately trying to prove her worth and deservingness. This dynamic wore down her relationships, as her partner often felt pressured and misunderstood. In marriage, the wounds from these comparisons became even more evident. Sophia felt a constant need for approval, often going to great lengths to meet unrealistic standards. She avoided discussing her own achievements or desires, believing they would never be enough. This created an imbalanced dynamic where her emotional needs were neglected. Internal comparisons with other couples or idealized expectations left her dissatisfied and anxious. Through therapy, Sophia began to recognize her own worth and the importance of accepting her imperfections. She learned to communicate her needs and value her accomplishments, building a more balanced and fulfilling marriage where she felt loved and appreciated for who she truly was. If you know someone facing similar dilemmas as Sophia, please share this video.